Good morning, Gwe. Welcome and thank you for joining us today as we celebrate human rights on this December 10th, the United Nations International Day for Human Rights. My name is Joe Fraser. I use the pronouns he and him. I'm the Director and CEO of the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission. It is my honor to welcome all of you here this morning. Our commissioners for the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission are present. We want to welcome them this morning. We also want to welcome our honored recipients of this year's Nova Scotia Human Rights Awards and the guests that have joined them here this morning. We want to acknowledge and thank the drummers from home for drumming us in and welcoming us with their beautiful drumming this morning, so thank you. And I do promise that we will hear more from the drummers from home later in our program this morning, but I'd like to introduce Khalifa Jallo Hamilton, Wayne Hamilton, and Ayo Oladejebi. Our event this morning is being held in the Red Chamber at the Nova Scotia Legislature, which is in Jibuktuk, Halifax, in the land of Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral and the unceded territory of the Mi'kmaq people. In the spirit of truth and reconciliation, and in recognition of the treaties of peace and friendship, we would like to welcome Elder Debbie Eisen to provide a welcoming this morning. Elder Debbie.
Good morning, everyone. It's so great to be here this morning after the storm that we had yesterday. I thought before I do the opening prayer this morning, it's very fitting that I'd like to share a teaching with you that looks back towards the human rights and what they derive from in the words of our people, in the teachings of our people. And these are the 7 grandfather teachings. And these 7 grandfather teachings have always been a part of our culture and have dated back before time immemorial. The first one is love. Knowing love is to know peace. Our love must be unconditional. When people are weak, that is when they need love the most. Love is a strong affection for another, and this can form between friends and family. Love is an attachment based on devotion, admiration, tenderness, and kindness for all things around you. For one to know, love, and accept themselves is to live at peace with the Creator and in harmony with all creation. Love knows no bounds. We must accept it sincerely and give it freely. The next one is respect. Respect is a way to honor creation by showing respect. There should be no part of creation that should be excluded from that honor that we are to give. We demonstrate respect by realizing the value of all people and things, and by showing courteous consideration and appreciation. We must give respect if we wish to be respected. We honor the traditional roles that we fill and the teachings we have been given. We honor our families and others, as well as ourselves. We are not to bring harm to anyone or anything. Respect is not just an action, but a heart-grown feeling. The next is bravery. Facing a problem with integrity is a true demonstration of bravery. We do what is right even when the consequences may be unpleasant. We face life with the courage to use our personal strengths to face difficulties, stand tall through adversity, and make positive choices. We must stand up for our convictions and have courage in our thinking and speaking. All of these actions together will lead to ceaseless bravery. The next is truth. Truth is having the knowledge of our cultural teachings. It gives us the ability to act without regret. We must understand, speak, and feel the truth while also honoring the power. Truth should not lead us to deceptions. We know who we are in our heart by knowing that we also know the truth. Our emotional, physical, mental, and spiritual gifts will guide each of us on our journey. Next is honesty. Facing a situation is to be brave, but having the courage not only to do the right thing, but also saying it is honesty. We must allow truth to be our guide. We must first be honest with ourselves. This will allow us to be honest with others. We must give full value to both the efforts of our own and others. When we walk through life with integrity, it is then that we know honesty. Be truthful and trustworthy. We must also remember to accept and act on truths through straightforward and appropriate communication. Next is humility. Humility is to know that we are part of creation. We must always consider ourselves as equal to one another. We should never think of ourselves as being better or worse than anyone else. Humility comes in many forms. This includes compassion, calmness, meekness, gentleness, and patience. We must reflect on how we want to present ourselves to those around us. We must be aware of the balance and equality with all of life, including humans, plants, and animals. The next is wisdom. The mixture of these teachings combined with the experience of life is what we refer to as wisdom. It is given to us by the Creator to be used for good. Wisdom carries other meanings, which also includes intelligence or knowledge. When we cherish our knowledge or intelligence, we are also cherishing our wisdom. We must use sound judgment along with the ability to separate inner qualities and relationships. We must use a good sense of course of action to form a positive attitude. We must remember to listen and use the wisdom that has been provided by our elders, tribal leadership, and our spiritual leaders. We must also remember the wisdom comes in all shapes, sizes, forms, and ages. And I think that today, the recipients of these awards have truly taken those 7 grandfather teachings to heart and have followed them to the best of their knowledge and ability. Thank you for listening to my 7 teachings. I would like to also open today's events with an opening prayer. I would invite each and every one of you to pray in your own way, as I will pray in mine. And I will introduce myself to the Creator in my native language, which is Ojibwe. If you can, I would ask everyone if you could stand, please. Ani buju nanatemakus, indejanakas, no meanganaway, and ishnabekwe, bachwana. Creator, we thank you for this beautiful sunshine that you have given us this morning to help ignite the fire in our bellies to move ahead with yet another day. We thank you for this snow that fell last night to help blanket Mother Earth, to allow her to rest, and to prepare us for the upcoming seasons next year. We ask, Creator, that you come into this room today with these men and women and help us to honor the recipients of these awards and the teachings that have been provided to them. I pray, Creator, for the health and safety of all of these men and women who are in this room. For our loved ones who are sick and need your help and strength and guidance in the days ahead, we pray, Creator, that you give them strength and bravery to defeat their illness. And for our loved ones who are preparing themselves for their final journey to you, we ask, Creator, that you welcome them with open arms. For those men and women who work tirelessly day in and day out, protecting our way of life here in Jabuktuk, and also for those men and women who work tirelessly protecting us from this disease we call COVID, we ask that you keep them safe and free from harm. And lastly, Creator, for our veterans, those men and women who are far from home, protecting our way of life here on Turtle Island, keep them safe until their tour of duty is complete and they return back to Turtle Island and back to the loving arms of their family and their friends. Tahomi Gwich Aha. Thank you very much. Will Allen.
Mother Debbie. Thank you, Elder Debbie, for sharing that teaching and that blessing with us this morning to start our ceremony. I also want to welcome those who are joining us by live stream. We do have a small group that's gathered here in the Red Chamber, masking and distancing as we can, but we do have other folks who are joining virtual by live stream, so welcome to all of you. Each year, we commemorate Human Rights Day with the presentation of Nova Scotia Human Rights Awards. After a hiatus last year, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, we are gathered this morning to honor 4 recipients of the 2021 Human Rights Awards. So we want to extend a warm welcome to the recipients and to their guests. Thank you for being here. I would also like to acknowledge that Angela Simmons, the MLA for Preston, is with us this morning, so welcome. We know that 2021 presented some significant challenges for all Nova Scotians, but as is so often the case, those challenges are exacerbated and the brunt of those challenges are faced most distinctly and most deeply by equity-seeking communities. Inequities to accessing healthcare, barriers to affordable housing, a rising cost of living, anti-Black and anti-Indigenous racism. These are just some of the examples of the very real and very harmful challenges facing Nova Scotians today. These issues demand action. Action from the Human Rights Commission, action from government, action from communities, from industry, and from each one of us as individuals. My ask of each of you today is that we all strive to follow the leadership of the 4 recipients that we're honoring today, and that we each find ways each day to live in the example that they're setting for us as we try to do more and better each day. This year's recipients of the Human Rights Awards really deserve to be honored and celebrated for the work they've done. And as we keep saying, these are unprecedented times in the COVID-19 pandemic, yet their good work continues, and it continues with resilience and with momentum and with really important impact. So we want to honor that today. Now, without further ado, I would like to invite the chair of the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission, Cheryl Knockwood, to come forward to present this morning's first award. Andreas Robinson is the recipient of the 2021 Human Rights Youth Award in recognition for his demonstrated passion and commitment to advancing education and awareness of the rights of youth and community. As an entrepreneur and an authentic youth and community engagement specialist, Andreas's areas of leadership include anti-racism, digital, financial, and cultural literacy, and branding. His mission is to empower youth, individuals, and communities to embrace their full potential. Over the past 6 years, through his work as a social entrepreneur with his company Infinitus Academy, Andreas has directly impacted and engaged youth, adults, and communities through consulting, programming, workshops, and other events. It is my honor to congratulate Andreas Robinson and welcome him to say a few words. Andreas?
Hello, good morning. Testing. Hopefully everyone can hear me. But no, I'm going to keep it short and sweet. I really appreciate everybody being here. This important work, not just myself. I know my name is on this, but for me, this recognition is absolutely for my mother, raised by a single mother, but for my family as well and for my community. And I think everybody that's being represented in here, really, this is a highlighting of the work that we do. But I really want to emphasize, it takes a community to raise a kid. And all of us have benefited from many people along the way. So I'm very humbled, very grateful to be here, but very excited because these are the needed conversations that especially COVID has highlighted. right? COVID is not necessarily new, but it's highlighting the bottlenecks, the challenges, the frustrations that we've had in systems. And I think this is a great opportunity, especially as we get into this digital era, to understand, as was mentioned already, the duty of care that we each have as individuals, as organizations, as communities, as government, as industry. So I think this is a great opportunity, a much needed conversation to continue, but thank you all for joining. I'm excited for Nova Scotia and for the other recipients to continue to lead in these fields. So thank you again very much.
Thank you, Andreas. Your passion and commitment to engaging youth and community is just so critically important. Thank you. Empowering and amplifying community wisdom and knowledge often leads to support and change when the right people are listening. Last year, our award recipients missed the opportunity to speak publicly about the work that they had done. So we reached out to last year's recipients to provide them with an opportunity to submit some pre-recorded remarks that we can share with you today. One of last year's recipients took us up on that offer. Last year's group award was a joint presentation to both the Association of Black Social Workers, or the ABSW, and the Health Association of African Canadians, or HAWC. These two organizations were listening when their community called for support. The ABSW and HAWC were recognized last year for their work in response to the COVID-19 pandemic and to the ongoing Black Lives Matter movement. Together, they rapidly responded to these two urgent issues. They coordinated a number of services to the African Nova Scotian community in response to identified need. They provided professional support to those who required it. They liaised between community and government. They helped to acquire masks and supplies and distribute those things to community. And they also coordinated the purchase and province-wide distribution of technology to assist with remote learning. We're going to play a short video featuring Veronica Marsman of the ABSW and Sharon Davis Murdoch of HAWC.
March 2020, when the government of Nova Scotia declared a provincial state of emergency, the Association of Black Social Workers, otherwise known as ABSW, and the Health Association of African Canadians, known as HAWC, came together and developed a response team to create a culturally specific response to the pandemic in African Nova Scotian communities throughout the province.
A provincial toll-free number was developed as a navigation tool that answered calls, provided supports and services, and when appropriate, made referrals based on the needs of individuals and organizations. Several key partnerships were created as well, all to respond to the unique needs of our communities.
As the threat of COVID-19 continues, so does the work of ABSW and HAWC COVID-19 initiative. We began vaccine clinics and promotional ads specifically for our communities, and we continue to make sure information and resources are in place. As the COVID-19 co-managers, we personally want to thank our communities for doing so well, keeping each other safe, and continuing to adhere to the COVID-19 protocols.
Our history and lived experience of anti-Black racism makes it hard for us to trust the health system and withstand the damage of COVID-19. But through initiatives such as the COVID Response and Impact Team, we are making great strides. Keeping our people informed is our priority. We provide up-to-date health information in newsletters and town halls.
Our toll-free line is still in place to provide support for people who are dealing with the stressors of COVID and ongoing life issues. We continue to offer programs and assistance during these challenging and changing times.
In closing, we want to take this opportunity to show our appreciation for the recognition from the Human Rights Commission to HAWK and ABSW by awarding us the 2020 Human Rights Award. Thank you.
Thank you, Veronica and Sharon, for those remarks and for the incredible work that your organizations continue to lead. The person-centered response of the ABSW and HAWK to the healthcare needs of African Nova Scotians during the peak of 2020's first wave of COVID-19 really recognized the humanity that's present in everyone, whether in crisis or experiencing ongoing challenges associated with their health or with the systems responsible for providing health care to Nova Scotians. Our next award recognizes a person who understood the humanity at the center of an ongoing crisis impacting many Nova Scotians. Dr. Margaret Dutchman is receiving the Nova Scotia Human Rights Award posthumously in recognition of her life's work as an advocate, as a researcher, and as a champion of the human rights of individuals impacted by poverty, mental health, and addictions throughout Cape Breton. I would invite Savannah DeWolf, a commissioner of the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission, to come forward and present the next award to Jeffrey Stropel, husband to the late Dr. Dutchman, who passed away in November 2020. Dr. Margaret Dutchman was an associate professor of sociology in the Department of Ilnu, Political and Social Studies at Cape Breton University in Sydney. Those she worked with described her as the most inspiring person they had ever met, as someone who could move a room with her passionate and engaging conversations. Her research in addictions was instrumental to shifting perceptions and discourse away from pathologizing addictions toward harm reduction and community-based support for people with addictions. Dr. Margaret was a board member of the Ally Centre of Cape Breton, which is an organization dedicated to combating stigma and to providing harm reduction services to individuals with addictions. Her research contributed to a deeper understanding of the urgent need for flexible, accessible, and timely care for individuals with addictions. And this led to support and funding for organizations and programs serving the community in Cape Breton and throughout Nova Scotia. I would like to invite Jeffrey Stropel to say a few words about Dr. Dutchman and her work.
Morning. On behalf of my late wife, Dr. Margaret Dutchman, I'd like to thank the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission for this award. It's a testament to the important work she undertook with the socially excluded members of the community and further honors her memory. Although Margaret was a university professor, no one who knew her would ever accuse her of being an ivory tower academic. From the very beginning of her academic career, she sought to put theory into practice and advocated for those unable to advocate for themselves. Much of her research focused on addictions, and in particular, injection drug users. Calling for community-based supports and harm reduction efforts sometimes brought her into conflict with those who could not see the value in expending resources on addicts, preferring instead neglect and its natural consequences, overdose and death. Like the Victorians who distinguished between the worthy and unworthy poor, these individuals could not see the point in helping those who were the authors of their own misfortune. Margaret made no such distinction and thought all human beings were worthy of respect and opportunity. Her faith was rewarded by a number of former injection drug users who enrolled in university and even went on to complete university degrees with her encouragement and support. Margaret lived a life characterized by service to others, her family, her friends, and the wider community. I'm gratified that her humanity and kindness are being recognized today, and I hope that she can continue to serve as a powerful example to others. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jeffrey. It's obvious that Dr. Dykman's work has had a lasting impact on the community and on so many individuals. So thank you for being here. Cape Breton is a special place. I may be biased as someone who was born and raised there, but there truly is a sense of belonging and community throughout the island that many of us are drawn to. Buffy McNeil channels this magic of Cape Breton. She describes her musical roots as being inspired by her mixed ancestry of Scottish, Acadian, and Mi'kmaq. This next video is part of the Somebody Pray project that began in January 2021, when Buffy envisioned the ways that she could support the health and well-being of Indigenous youth. Buffy says that as an artist, as a singer, and as an educator, the lyrics to Somebody Pray came pouring out when she reflected on those in her life who've been negatively impacted by the violent history of Indian residential schools in Canada. Here is Buffy McNeil's video, Somebody Pray.
Take me home, I have to get back to my mother.
Thank you so much to Buffy McNeil for allowing us to share and showcase and enjoy her talents at this really important occasion. As we all continue on our national and individual journeys toward reconciliation, artists like Buffy can offer us a way in to the stories of Indigenous communities, survivors, and families, and to the legacy that has been impacted by colonialism and oppression and discrimination. And that can help us be guided toward a better future, a future based on respect and appreciation and understanding of Indigenous culture and traditions. You can learn more about Buffy McNeil's art at www.buffymcneil.com. 1 week ago today, on December 3rd, we commemorated the International Day of Persons with Disabilities. Our next award recipient was the keynote speaker at a breakfast event honoring the occasion, where he described his journey as a human rights advocate with a focus on the rights of persons with disabilities. I would like to invite Denise Mentes-Smith, a commissioner with the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission, to come forward to present this individual human rights award to Stephen Esty. Stephen has worked with organizations such as the Council of Canadians with Disabilities, Disabled Persons International, human rights institutions, governments, intergovernmental organizations, and United Nations agencies to advance disability rights. Steve was the advisor to the Canadian government delegation to the United Nations that drafted the Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, or the CRPD. From 2007 until 2010, he led Disabled Persons International's work to encourage governments around the world to sign and ratify the CRPD. Last week, Steve described his work on the CRPD as providing his life with a bit of a detour. I would say that was quite the detour. As a consultant, Steve has devoted his life to projects that are strategically aimed at the effective implementation of the CRPD, the full realization of disability rights, and the effective implementation of the CRPD around the world. Steve is an incredible asset to the disability rights community in Nova Scotia and in Canada and across the globe. It's my honor to invite Steve Esty to say a few words.
There should be a little box back here for me to stand on. I'm going to step to this side. People see me? Yeah. I think, first of all, we can all agree that that picture of me on the screen is far too large. So perhaps you should take it down. I don't know. Anyway, folks, it's awfully nice to be here. I'd like to thank the Commission for this honor. I'd also like to congratulate the other recipients this morning. It's been very interesting to listen to your work, and it's really an honor to be here with you. So thank you for that. Jeff and I were talking, Jeff from the Commission and I were talking, said that I had 5 to 7 minutes to speak this morning. And I thought to myself, I don't often get 5 to 7 minutes to talk at Province House, so what am I going to say? And I thought about a number of different things. I could certainly talk about myself, but you've already done far too much of that, so I won't bother with that. What I have been thinking about instead is the whole nature of human rights as we celebrate Human Rights Day today. And the thing that occurs to me as someone who's worked in the area of human rights for 30 plus years, I mean, when I started doing this stuff, it wasn't called human rights. It was called accessibility, or it was called equal education or special education, or all these kinds of things. It's only in the last few years, since we worked on the convention, that we've kind of begun to think of disability rights as human rights. And as someone who's been involved in this for a long time, it's been, a useful evolution in my own understanding around this. When I think about human rights, I think that the big challenge with human rights is the indivisibility of rights. Because one human right impacts on another human right. So, we talk about the right to education or the right to employment or all of these different things, different economic, social, and cultural rights. You can't have one without the other. It becomes very complicated. So the role for organizations like the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission is a very, very challenging role. And I was at a meeting last week in Ottawa. First time in 2 years I was on an airplane. It was very strange to be there. But my wife Ann and I went to Ottawa last week. And I was at a meeting of senior officials of human rights from across the country. We're meeting to talk about the implementation of rights in Canada. And somebody made a very interesting observation. Talk about the challenge with human rights and the implementation of human rights, and the fact that they're all connected to one another. But in Canada, we have 3 levels of government: federal government, provincial government, and municipal government. And all of these levels of government have a piece in the human rights puzzle. And it's very challenging to coordinate things. So this all happened in the context of a discussion about housing. And I think you could really get a sense of it. I mean, we who live here in Halifax these days, we hear a lot about the challenges of housing and homelessness and people having a difficult time finding a place to live and things like that. They hear, for example, that the province has launched a task force to look at housing. I understand from people who are involved with that the task force that looks at housing isn't interested in talking about disability issues as part of their work. I find that perplexing because if you look at the reality of who are homeless in this city, many of those people are people with disabilities. They have psychosocial disabilities or other kinds of disabilities. So you can't really talk about homelessness without talking about disability, or same way that you can't talk about homelessness without talking about race or any other thing because of the indivisibility of rights. So the thing that happened from this meeting, and I want to put this to you, Joe, is there was a call for some kind of a mechanism to begin to coordinate discussions between these 3 levels of government. There's some things happening now between the federal government and the provincial government. There's the Continuing Committee on Human Rights and other mechanisms between federal and provincial governments. But there's not really much that happens that incorporates municipal governments into that. And without that piece, in an area like housing, you're simply not going to get to where you need to go. So I think that, as I think about human rights and my own involvement with human rights, the important thing is to think about the interconnectedness of those things and to find ways to bring the different levels of government together to the same table just to talk about these things. So I think that's probably far too much of a lecture for a Friday morning from me. I'm going to leave it at that. Safe to say again, thank you very kindly for the honor today. I do appreciate it. Thanks. Sure.
Thank you so much, Steve, for the incredible work you do and for continuing to push us to do more and to do better. I know you're joined today by your wife, Anne, who is a disability rights giant in her own right, as well as with your mom, Dee, and your sister, James. I'm so happy you could all be here today. Our next award, and the final award of the morning, is named in honor of the late Burnley Allen Rocky Jones, a legendary advocate, educator, and activist for the rights of African Canadians and a champion of human rights. I would like to invite Rocky Jones' daughter, Tracy Jones Grant, to come forward to present the Rocky Jones Award. This year's recipient is physician Dr. Ron Milne, in recognition of his commitment to advancing access to equitable healthcare within African Nova Scotian communities. Dr. Milne is a medical doctor who goes above and beyond the call to serve. He is a navigator, an advocate, and an ally to African Nova Scotians, as well as the physician for the Nova Scotia Brotherhood Initiative, which is a project designed to meet the healthcare needs of African Nova Scotian men. Dr. Ron's contribution and advocacy to Black men's health and to the support for the African Nova Scotian community is commendable. He is an advocate on the social determinants of health and the impact they have on the Black community. He has created safe spaces and normalized conversations around medical issues impacting Black men, things like prostate cancer, hypertension, diabetes, stroke, heart disease, and other conditions. Presently, Dr. Milne is actively advocating for a sisterhood initiative to bring the benefits of the brotherhood model to African Canadian women. Dr. Milne is carrying on a tradition with deep roots in his family. His grandfather, Dr. Alfred E. Waddell, was one of the first Black graduates of Dalhousie Medical School in 1933, and he went on to be a respected physician and civil rights advocate. Without further delay, I would like to invite Dr. Ron Milne to say a few words. Dr. Milne.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for being here. I was really shocked to get this award. I'm humbled and I'm honored to be recognized by my home province, but I'm getting the award, but this is really a team award. The Nova Scotia Brotherhood team has worked really relentlessly for the last 6 years to work towards justice and the human right of health and the social determinants of health, housing, education, legal issues, income. These are all basic human rights, and they all go into making up what really is health by any definition. So I just want to give a shout out to the team. First of all, our manager, Mario Roll, Devon Bundy, who's our team lead, who is African Nova Scotian, Dwayne Winter, originally from the Caribbean, but has been here for many years. He's our community liaison, and Elizabeth Nkrumah Obeng, who's our newest team member, who is our navigator, originally from Ghana. I think I would like to acknowledge and talk a little bit about my mother, first of all, who unfortunately couldn't be here today. She was a social worker and the head of social work at the Nova Scotia Hospital. And she actually got human rights awards herself back in the day, probably back in the 1970s. And so I'm certainly following her example. Also, my grandfather was mentioned, and he was a real advocate for and a champion for civil rights and human rights at the time that he practiced, including helping Viola Desmond in her efforts when she was so badly treated by the province. So I don't have too much more to say other than health really is a human right, and health is a complicated thing that's made up of a lot of different components, and it's not just doctors, nurses, hospitals, pills, surgery. It's much more complicated than that. And if we neglect the other areas of health, like education, housing, income, employment, justice, then we're really missing the boat in terms of healthcare. So I think that's all I have to say, other than I'll just quote one of my other personal heroes, Dr. King, who said, "The arc of moral universe is long, but it bends towards justice." And I think that's very true. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Milne, for your inspiring words and for the great work that you do. And thank you to all of today's award recipients. On the International Human Rights Day, it's really heartening to be surrounded by such exemplary humans who are doing such incredible work to advance our shared goal of a more just, a more equitable, and a more inclusive province. So thank you. Before we conclude today's program, I would like to fulfill the promise I made earlier and invite the drummers from home to come forward once again and help to ground us all in the power of the djembe. Would also like to take this opportunity to share with you that one of the drummers from home, Ayo Oladejebi, is with us this morning, not only as a performer, but as a member of the Nova Scotia Human Rights Commission team. Ayo joined the Commission earlier this year as our Director of Race Relations, Equity and Inclusion, and has just brought a wealth of knowledge and skill and compassion, and really works to prioritize partnership and engagement with community. And under Ayo's leadership, we're really charting a new path for the Commission's mandate to educate the public and to advance human rights. So thank you, Ayo, for being here, and to all the drummers from home. Oh, there really is nothing quite like the power of the drum. Thanks so much to Khalifa and Wayne and Io. In concluding today's program, I would like to thank Jeff Overmars for his leadership in organizing this wonderful event. I'd also like to thank all of those who joined us online through the live stream and all those who are gathered here in the Red Chamber. Thank you all for being here. Thank you to our recipients and our guests. Thank you to the event organizing committee for doing such a great job. Thank you to the staff of the legislature for hosting us, to Communications Nova Scotia for the great work they do. Also to AB Captioning for the CART transcription services. And to Debbie Johnson-Powell and Sydney Pakosh, our ASL interpreters, thank you all. For anyone who is interested in learning more about any of today's award recipients or more about human rights, I would encourage you to visit the Commission's website. We're at humanrights.novascotia.ca. Before we part ways, I would like to take just a moment to highlight a new initiative that the Commission is going to be launching in January, Human Rights on the Road. This series of community information sessions will focus on delivering in-person and virtual presentations and information sessions in African Nova Scotian communities across the province. Following this series of information sessions in African Nova Scotian communities, we will be working with other communities to replicate that model and visit other communities as well. So please watch for those advertisements and join the discussion. And thanks so much, everyone, for being here. Happy Human Rights Day. Nemultis.